In gatherings, we are stirred like the leaves of the fall season, rustling around sacred trees, tossed hither and yon until we come to rest together, quietly, softly. We come to gather strength from each other and to give strength to each other. When our hearts sing or when they mourn, it is the way of compassion telling us to give. It is the way of peace telling us to share our gifts, for we are happiest and most powerful when love is made apparent in and through us. Spirit of the circle that is love, as we twirl in this dance called life, we give thanks for reminding us each day of our task of ministering to each other with a searching glance, a safe touch, a generous smile, a thoughtful word. In gratitude, we celebrate with open hearts and minds as we discover who we are, separate from each other and yet bound to all others. In this circle that holds all life, may we work toward widening its boundaries until there are none. These words to call us into worship from Marta Valentin.
Good morning. If we could all rise in body or spirit, we're going to sing our first song, which is Gather the Spirit. Gather the Spirit, the power, our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour, our trials in this light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, seeds for the sowing are laid in store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun, winter and spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then, gather in hope, compassion and strength, gather to celebrate once again. You may take a seat.
Good morning. My name is Susan Kinney, and I'll be your worship associate today. Welcome to you, old friends and new, young and not so young. Whether you are here in person or are connecting on Zoom, you are an essential part of our service today. We are one people of many beliefs, origins, identities, sexualities, and genders. We speak with love, we listen with intent, and we learn from each other. We are delighted that you are here. There are rugs in the front and back of the sanctuary with some quiet activities for children, and the religious exploration area is open for families who might need some extra space during the service. The words for our chalice lighting today will be offered by Marion Jordan.
Our words are by Adrienne Marie Brown. Each of us, by our work here, contributes to a movement of love. May love hold and heal those who need to be held and healed. May love guide more and more people every day. We light our chalice this morning knowing that we are blessed to be in the business of growing love. May our work together bless the world.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. I'm Amy Brock, and I'm the Director of Religious Exploration for Children and Youth, and it is time for our Time for All Ages. So if you are young or young at heart, I invite you to come and join me on the rug for our story today. And while they're coming, I have an important task for you. I want you to think about your favorite tree. Maybe you don't have a favorite tree yet, so maybe it's an opportunity to think about what your favorite tree might look like. Maybe it is tall, or maybe it's short. Maybe it's pointy, or maybe it has lots and lots of branches. Maybe it's orange in the fall. Maybe it stays green all the time. I don't know, it's your tree. Do you have your favorite tree in mind yet? Can I see a head nod or a pinky finger wave? Nice. Okay, so while you're thinking about your favorite tree, I want us to think about how, as we all get to have different things that inspire us or give us good ideas about how we might help each other. And so I'm wondering, with your favorite tree in mind, what would it be like to be that tree? So you, as you in this space, who also sometimes thinks about helping people. If you were a tree and you were you, what would that be like? We have a story that's going to help us think more about it today. It's called Be a Tree. Be a tree. Stand tall. Stretch your branches out to the sun. Let your roots curl and coil into the soil to ground you. Your spine is the tree trunk, giving you shape, holding your head and giving you food. Your skin is like the bark, kind of dead on the outside, but protecting what's alive on the inside. Beneath your bark are layers, like these on sapwood, carrying nutrients to help you grow bigger and taller. It's also like heartwood, strong in your bones that support you. And your heart center is your pith. It's the keeper of all the nutrients that you've gotten since you were a tiny little sapling. And high above your crown may be round, draping, or broad. It collects dust, shields sun, and shades your roots on hot days. Wave your leaves around in the wind. Breathe in the air. Drink in the sun. Let them fuel you and the world. See yourself, branches and leaves above, roots below, trunk in between. You are a tree. And now, look around you. Do it, look around you. Look at your friends. You're not alone. You're one of many trees in our UUFCO forest this morning. Our roots twine, joining all of the trees in the forest together. It makes a big wide web of information. We purify the air and anchor the soil, preventing erosion. Our bodies, branches, and roots are home to birds and mammals and insects. We sustain ecosystems. Trees that are away from their native homes are sometimes vulnerable, but together, a forest of trees is strong. Parent trees nurture their young trees. Old trees shade new trees. Strong trees shelter weak trees. And healthy trees help sick trees. We are a family, a community, a whole cosmos. So be a tree, because together we are one forest. Thanks for inviting me to be part of your forest this morning. We are going to close our time together and explore more things with Morgan. But before we say our Children's Covenant, I want to remind you that we are going to be starting our RE classes soon, and we're going to need some help to support our young saplings as they explore all kinds of things with us. So if I have some wise trees here that would be willing to join us this fall, I want to let you know that there is a sign-up sheet in the kiosk, and you can let me know that you're interested in joining to support us this year. You might volunteer one Sunday or once a month, or just let me know, get on my list for when we need help. So with that, we'll close our time together, but just keep thinking about it. If you identify as an older, wiser tree, just keep that in mind today, and maybe we'll connect and get you connected to our young saplings for the fall. And with that, we'll say our Children's Covenant. In this place, I am kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I am a friend to the earth and all animals and people. In this place, I am loved.
Good morning. I'm Leora Mock, your fellowship administrator, and I have a couple of announcements. As you know, all announcements are in our weekly email, the ACE, and yes, we do make it every week for you. A few are highlighted in the skyline in your hands, and then there's just a few that I want to highlight here. I've been here at the fellowship a little over 4 years, and I love the gallery in Linus Pauling. It's a place that I visit on a pretty regular basis when I need a break from work and I just need to have some deep breaths. It's always cool in there, and to maybe find a little inspiration. And I have to say that the current exhibit is one that kind of goes deep. I really love it, and I hope you'll take some time to go see it. It's called On the Surface, an exploration of texture, and it's in the gallery now through October 1st. This coming Tuesday, our men's fellowship will gather for their summer social potluck. And again, that's on Tuesday. And men of all ages are invited, both long-timers and newcomers. And please bring your own beverage and a few things to share, a potluck dish, and maybe a joke, a story, or a game. This fall, the Mad Hatter returns for our auction, and that will begin on October 6th with an in-person kickoff here at the fellowship and continue with an online auction as we've done in the past few years. Finally, I am super excited because Adult Spiritual Development has a whole slate of offerings for us this fall, so watch out. They'll be coming in hot the beginning of September, and those include Beginning ASL, Aging and Spirituality, and World Religions, Practices, and Beliefs. And the Sign-ups for all of those will be in the ACE, but I'm excited and I want you to be too. All right, have a good one.
Generosity is one of the values we recognize as important to our faith tradition. We take an offering to sustain the life of this congregation and support our work in the greater community. The ritual of passing the basket is a reminder that our generosity is an expression of our love.
My name is Ellen Atkin. I'm a member of the pastoral care team. Information is out on the kiosk on a lovely card. One of the ways we connect in community is sharing our joys and sorrows. Khalil Gibran, in his beautiful essay on joy and sorrow, said that your joys and your sorrows come up from the same well and are one. As we enter this time of sharing these joys and sorrows, please feel free to light a candle on either side of the sanctuary for the ones that you're holding in your heart. We have a joy and a sorrow from Dana and Jerry Regan. Flowers for this morning are given in the honor of their son's memory, who died last August. The Nourish team has a joy for the abundance from our gardens at this time of year and for the sharing this morning for Bethlehem Inn. We were also able to make a large donation to Shepherd's House on Friday. Please allow these words to linger in your heart and spirit.
We now enter a time of meditation and quiet reflection, which will be opened and closed by the ringing of the bell. Our words for contemplation today come from civil rights theologian Reverend Howard Thurman. Look well to the growing edge. All around us, worlds are dying and new worlds are being born. All around us, life is dying and life is being born. The fruit ripens on the tree. The roots are silently at work in the darkness of the earth against a time when there will be new leaves, fresh blossoms, green fruit. Such is the growing edge. It is the extra breath from the exhausted lung, the one more thing to try when all else has failed, the upward reach of life when weariness closes in upon all endeavor. This is the basis of hope in moments of despair, the incentive to carry on when times are out of joint and people have lost their reason, the source of confidence when worlds crash and dreams whiten into ash. The birth of the child, life's most dramatic answer to death. This is the growing edge incarnate. Look well to the growing edge. Our speaker this morning is Reverend Morgan Schmidt. Reverend Schmidt is a local community collaborator who advocates for our most vulnerable neighbors. Recently appointed executive director of the Central and Eastern Oregon chapter of the Red Cross, she began Pandemic Partners in 2020, ran for county commissioner in 2022, and is an ordained Presbyterian pastor. She was the speaker at our Easter service in April, and we're fortunate to have her with us again this morning. Please welcome Reverend Morgan Schmidt.
Good morning, my friends. Oh, you are taller if you use the step. Thank you so much for having me back again. It's very brave of you. I'm really honored, and it's always just such a pleasure to be with you all, truly. This is an incredible community of love. Which brings us to our conversation today. When therapists are being trained to be therapists, they're taught to ask the question, what's in the room? What's happening in the room? What is the therapist bringing? What is the client bringing? And how do those things work together? I was taught at a seminary where therapists were also trained, and so we pastors also got a crash course in asking ourselves that question when we come into a room. What's in the room? So I'm mindful of the big picture context that we step into today. That last week you had a conversation around the realities of climate change. That this Sunday you showed up for some reason to a sermon called Love in a Time of Disaster. And that in between, many of us have had a front row seat to headlines about devastation and disaster connected to climate change. And so I am mindful that Hawaii is on our hearts this morning, and that I don't know that we can hear that word disaster right now without thinking of those who have been impacted and those lives who have been lost. I'm also mindful of my part in the big picture, The example given to me in seminary was, if you show up at the pulpit with your arm in a sling, people might not hear another word you say because they're going to be wondering what happened. So for me this morning, I want to share that I have a little bit of a cough. It's not COVID, it's from the wildfire smoke. But I'm going to try not to blow smoke at you this morning. See, don't give it to me that easy. When there's jokes, you can really laugh, but that was a terrible one. And I'm mindful, full transparency, in pastor school, they also taught us that when you're preaching, you should preach from your scars, not your wounds. That you don't want to put, the gore on everyone else while you're still in the midst of healing, but sometimes life happens, and so it only feels appropriate to me, as I am sharing with you how I come into this space, that I lost my dog about a month ago. And that is coloring how I feel about these words, and I am sure that I'm not alone in coming to this room today with a sense of heaviness, a sense of your own tragedy or disaster, or maybe you're part of that very terrible club of having lost a beloved pet. So I'm just mindful of the space this morning. I'm also mindful that you might be coming here and it is blue skies in your world. It is summer in Bend, and that you're like, really? I came to a talk about disaster. Maybe you're having a great time in life right now, and I want to say, wonderful. A hearty yes to blue sky days. May there be more of them for more of us, and may you celebrate the realities of wherever you find yourself. But if you are here and you are heartbroken, that's okay too. That's okay too. So this sermon might be a Debbie Downer. It might not be happy clappy. I apologize. Come see me afterwards if you hate it. Not really. Emails can go to Scott. Disaster is inevitable. Heartbreak is a reality of the human experience, right? Can you please raise your hand if you have experienced disaster or tragedy or loss or heartbreak? I'm looking. No? Keep your hands. All right, it's everybody. Yeah. We all know what it means to have our hearts broken. We all know what disaster feels like. And it doesn't have to be a raging wildfire to be considered a disaster. Maybe you've lost someone. Maybe you don't know how to pay that bill. Maybe you failed or someone failed you. Maybe you can't even imagine where to begin. Maybe you've tried everything. Maybe you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, or you feel guilty for not feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders. That's okay. Maybe you feel like you just can't fix it. Or maybe someone you love is feeling these things. We know that all is not right with the world, and even when the sky isn't falling, we're reminded that everything is not the way it's meant to be. You are bracing for the day that you pull up to the gas pump and no one is there. Disaster. You stub your toe again on the coffee table that hasn't moved. It's just been right there, and every time your toe finds it. The injustice of that weighs heavy on me. Or maybe you don't get invited to a friend's party, or you forget about that project that was due at school, and that sense of panic starts to rise. I see you. I know that feeling. Or maybe you go to clean your bathroom like the grown adult woman that you are, and find soft drywall adjacent to your bathtub, and suddenly you're learning how to drywall, and there's a hole in your bathroom as we speak, just hypothetically. So even if your skies are blue right now, disaster tragedy, heartache, this sense that all is not right with the world is a present reality to us. It's an inevitable part of the human experience, and I would argue that it binds us together in commonality, in unity, in a way that things like only beauty and love and joy can. Pain is also a bond that we share. I have had the privilege of traveling with an organization that teaches clergy people how to practice peacemaking in their everyday lives. And they do that by taking groups to places of incredible conflict around the world. I was privileged enough to get to go with them to Israel and Palestine and to meet with people who are living in the heart of an age-old place of conflict. And I cannot express to you the honor that it was to sit down with these people who live that conflict reality day in and day out, who breathe disaster and tragedy. I don't care what side you might find yourself on. I don't know that there are sides in suffering. But we had the privilege of sitting down with an Israeli woman who was Jewish and a Palestinian man who was Muslim. And they had both lost a child as a result of the conflict. And they were part of an organization that had people like this go around and meet with groups to tell their story, to be a living, breathing, heartbroken example that we are really all the same when it comes down to it, that the labels and the walls we put up aren't really enough to separate us. When we have that grief, that tragedy, that pain in common, it can help us tap into our deepest humanity and our sense of how we can offer dignity and care to even those who seem like the other in our world or might seem like the enemy. As a youth pastor, I would often talk to parents about their goals for raising their kids. And parents say the coolest things if you ask them this question. I highly recommend it. They would talk about helping them thrive, helping them be happy, helping them chase their dreams, wanting them to have everything their heart desires. And one day I was struck by a parent when I asked this question who said, I want to teach them how to navigate the hard stuff. I want to teach them how to grieve well. I want to teach them how to navigate life when their hearts are broken. And I want to give them tools to continue to be a person of kindness and love, even when they're in pain, when they encounter someone else who is in pain, who has had their own disaster. How wise, since it's an inevitable part of the human experience. I don't ever give rules when I teach or preach, but I have rules for you today. So there'll be a test later. When we're talking about love in a time of disaster, and let's be honest, any time can be a time of disaster. Speaking of what's in the room, on my way here, someone came up and asked me, they saw me on the side of the road on Skyliners, walking towards my car with a heartbroken expression on my face this morning, almost late. And the car that was just ahead of me on Skyliners had hit a deer. And it was a young kid driving, didn't know what to do. He was all shooken up. I was all shooken up. And we were still trying to figure out how to get this deer maybe some assistance. Because it can happen anytime, right? We don't plan for it. We think we're going to be on time, and then life happens and we need to be present to pain and heartbreak and disaster when it happens. So rules for love in a time of disaster, and I'm going to speak first and foremost to those who are in the midst of pain and grief, because the rules are a little bit different depending on where you're at. In the Red Cross, we call it blue skies and gray skies. Blue skies is when we don't have an active disaster response going on. In those times, we're doing a lot of preparation, we're doing a lot of planning, and then when it's gray skies, it's all hands on deck for whatever is needed next. It's a lot of improv, it's a lot of compassion in action. So for those of you, whether you're in this place right now, whether you have been in a place of grief or whether inevitably you will be. These are your rules. Number one, you must remember that you are not alone. You must remember that you are not alone. That whatever pain you are feeling binds you to each person around you, whether they know it or not, whether the connection is obvious or not. Rule number 2, and this one is really important. It's pastorally, sometimes you're asked to respond to things that you have no idea what to do. And this is pretty much the only advice I ever give, because what place do I have to offer any advice for those who are heartbroken? But it all belongs. If you are heartbroken, it all belongs. Whatever you are feeling, whatever you need within the bounds of reason and law, there is no right way to be heartbroken. There is no wrong way to grieve. Again, my golden retriever passed away a month ago, and we have a ton of sunflowers in my yard that he loved, and so I've been cutting them somewhat regularly and keeping a vase of these sunflowers in the house. And I unknowingly brought in a vase of sunflowers the other day, and there was a bee on one of them. And I felt so bad. I was like, what have I done? I took your home, you were doing stuff. And I totally interfered. And he wasn't moving too much. And then a couple hours later, he still hadn't moved. And then a little while after that, my partner Ben just found me weeping next to this sunflower and this bee that wasn't moving. And I found myself a little bit ridiculous, a little bit, because this is the way of things. I won't leave you in suspense. It turns out we tried to, Ben, in order to dignify the life and death of the bee, was going to add him to sort of the compost situation at our house, let him give back to the world in beautiful ways. And then we heard buzzing in the compost bucket, and it turned out that he was just sleeping. The bee, which will make you feel even more ridiculous when you are weeping over a sleeping bee. You will be ridiculous, and it all belongs. Or you will find yourself in moments wishing that you had some sort of button or sash that could explain to the world, hey, I'm weird right now, I'm grieving, you don't have to ask, please don't try to fix it. It would be a very long sash. But some sort of visual, we have certain cultures in the world who have beautiful, beautiful visuals of, hey, I'm not myself right now, I'm experiencing heartache, and I just think we should brainstorm some options for that. Because it all belongs. And being present to our own pain teaches us to be with others when they are in pain. In my seminary training, we had these really intense small groups where you were supposed to bring a heartbreaking story from your own life to share with the group and figure out how you navigate these moments together. It's really good training. And I'm thankful for it because the feedback I got after sharing a particular story is a friend of mine looked at me and said, you smile a lot when you're talking about your own tragedy, as if you're trying to take care of us, and as if maybe you haven't taken care of yourself. And it has stuck with me, and I'm mindful of taking care with my own pain so that I can be present to the pain of others. Love in a time of disaster, if you are the one grieving, ritual is important. Making meaning is important. There's reasons why we light candles in a certain moment during the service, and that's actually what we've chosen to do at home each night. I'm lighting a candle. I don't care how weird your ritual is, as long as it's meaningful to you, because it all belongs. And finally, probably the hardest thing, and only when you're ready, because there is no right or wrong way to grieve, is to know that you can ask for help, that it's okay to ask. My mom lives in Illinois, and it has been killing her, not to be present with me as I am present to my grief around losing Buddy. And there's no way for her to fix it, right? There's no right word to say. But we've been doing that candle ritual every night, and I was running out of there's only so much wax in a candle, and I was attached to the scent even at this point. Like, that smell kind of is a reminder, right? Our senses are so powerful in these rituals that we create. And so I finally said to my mom, you know what you could do? You could order me more of these candles. Thank you. And now I have probably, like a month's worth because she was so eager to help, which is kind. Now, if you are a responder in the midst of disaster, I guarantee you will not know what to do all the time. And you will not always know what to say. And that's okay. If we all make peace with that today, can you imagine the burden that would be lifted from our shoulders, that nobody knows exactly what to do or say when disaster and heartbreak happen? I had a terrible failure as a pastor a few years ago. I was mingling with our congregation at First Presbyterian, talking to folks before the service started, and this woman looked incredibly sad. And I went over to her and I said, what's going on? And she said, my dog died. And I knelt down next to her and I put my hand on her shoulder and I just said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That is the worst. And she looked at me deadpan and she goes, what was worse was when my husband died. Yes, that would be, I didn't mean like literally the word, like, I'm just so sorry. All around, I'm sorry, that wasn't the right thing to say. That we have these moments where you're just like, I can't get it quite right. And that's okay. She still spoke to me after that. But here's the overarching rule of thumb as a responder in a time of disaster, is that you show up, that you are present, that you contain somehow all of your anxiety over not knowing exactly what to do or say. You keep that to yourself. The person in pain doesn't need to help you navigate that, right? But you show up with whatever you have. We had a fire in June in the Dalles, and 4 homes were lost. And the way things fell into place with our disaster response as the Red Cross, I was the only staff person there one day. We had opened a shelter, closed the shelter because nobody came. And then I got a phone call relayed to me from a woman who was where the fire had happened. And she said, we need help. We couldn't get to the shelter last night. We don't know what to do. And there's no guidebook for these moments, even if you work for the Red Cross. Sometimes it's improv. So I drove up there. I had very little that I considered helpful in the car. I had a case of water, some snacks, some blankets, and just myself. And I rolled up, and this woman who had called me was caring for her. She hadn't lost her home. She was caring for those who had. And I talked with each of them for a little while, and she came back over to me and gave me the biggest hug. And she said, because what did I have to offer? I was like, you want water? You just lost your home? I have granola bars. And it feels like it will never be enough. And she said, we didn't know where to start. We didn't know where to begin. And she looked at me and she said, and then you showed up. And we had a beginning. Hey. And I looked right back at her and I said, I don't know about that. Because it seems to me like you are the beginning for your neighbors. Because you are the one who is here doing the next thing and caring for them and showing up. And I only get to be here for a moment in time. But you are the beginning of what hope looks like for this neighborhood, for your neighbors. It's showing up, it's paying attention, it's doing the next thing that you think is needed, even though it feels like it will never be enough, because the truth is it will never be enough. We can't fix those moments. I couldn't give them a new home in that moment, but we can show up. And she said to me, all I can smell is smoke. And I have a little kit of nerdy pastor things I have with me sometimes. And I had some anointing oil that smells really good. And I put it on a handkerchief, a bandana. And I said, if this smells terrible, tell me. But if this gives you something else to breathe in, this is for you. And she held it to her face. And she took a deep breath. And she said, finally, I can smell something other than smoke. You just do what you can with what you have where you are, with all love, with all kindness. And that is what is called for in moments of disaster. I have a couple other quick rules that go under that umbrella. Are you ready? Those of you taking notes, there's a test later. Love is not a competitor when disaster hits. I found myself thinking, even condemning my own grief and saying, oh my gosh, other people have it so much worse. How are you going to bring up your dog this morning when Hawaii is on fire, when people have lost their lives, when things could be so much worse? I don't know that serves. What serves is to connect our grief with others' grief and to let that be a point of connection and kindness and love that we share with one another. I keep saying I lost the best dog, and I've been so guilty about that. I'm like, but everybody has the best dog. They're all the best, and that's okay. Grief and pain and tragedy isn't like pie. It's not like there's not enough, and somebody needs a big piece and somebody needs a little piece. There's enough to go around. There's plenty in the world. We don't need to worry about taking up too much space. And we certainly don't need to remind others who are hurting that others have it worse. Love does not make disaster about itself. I can't tell you how often people have heard of tragedy or disaster happening elsewhere and thought to themselves, that just makes me so grateful for everything I have. That comparative gratitude is icky, and I won't say much more about it, just don't. Because somebody else's tragedy is not an opportunity for you to feel so good about where you are, right? It's an opportunity to connect in love. And love doesn't fill the silence with trite junk, I wrote, because I knew there would be children. You can stash your everything happens for a reasons, and in certain circles, your God wouldn't give you more than you could handle. Or call me and I will kick that person in the shin for you who says those things. If you don't know what to say, stay away from offering that sort of empty reassurance. And think about maybe how you would feel if somebody said that to you in a time of grief, right? It's so much better. And I'm sure those of us in the room who have been comforted by someone, so much better, you feel so much more seen when somebody just says, there are no words. I'm so sorry. There are no words, but I am with you. And love doesn't make assumptions. Love asks. And love keeps asking about what might be good news for that person. The exception I wrote down here is that if you must assume what somebody needs, you can assume chocolate. And if you know their particular tastes and treats, you can assume their comfort drink, bourbon, tequila. Hypothetically, again. You can assume that even if they don't want the chocolate now, it'll go in a drawer and it'll be a good reminder of your care later. So if you know a person well, don't hesitate about those things. I had a volunteer at the Red Cross put a card on my desk. And it was the most thoughtful thing that has taught me something about holding space for people who are in pain. This isn't even the inside of the card. I didn't open it for a minute. The envelope says, this is a sympathy card. I understand if you can't open it yet. I still haven't opened the ones from when I lost my dog. It's okay. Holding space for whatever that person needs without making assumptions that they're going to grieve in the same way as you or need the same things that you do, but staying curious and open and bringing the treats, but remembering that everybody is going to navigate this journey in their own way. One of the gentlemen that lost his home in that fire in the Dalles was a disabled veteran. And as I was talking to him, I just said, well, what do you feel like you need today? I'm sorry that I can't fix it. He said, well, I'm really hungry. And I was like, granola bar? Which is not a meal for a grown man. And I knew it when I said it. So I sort of laughed at myself. And I said, that's not helpful, is it? He said, not really. I said, if I could get you anything today, somewhere locally, like we're not dreaming, but something I can actually get you today, what would it be? What food would be comforting to you? And he looked down at his old dog, who he had managed to escape his trailer with. He looked back up at me and he said, well, sometimes the dog and I, we like to enjoy a bowl of Fruity Pebbles together. Fruity Pebbles. In the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know if dogs are supposed to have. I don't know. It's not for me to say in this moment. It is not for me to say. That's okay. And you can bet, with the clarity of a request like that, in a time of incredible heartbreak, that I showed up with Fruity Pebbles. That we would all, in that moment, show up with the Fruity Pebbles. We don't know what it's going to mean to comfort someone unless we ask, and they might not be ready to answer. And it's okay to take a minute and then ask again, and to keep checking in. Because the first rule is we need to remember we're not alone. I love to dance, and I have friends who have kept asking every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, you probably don't want to, but do you want to come dancing? And I'm like, oh, that sounds terrible. But they keep asking. And I know that there will come a night where I'm like, you know what, that sounds good. And I will be so grateful that they kept trying and they didn't give up on me and leave me alone in my grief. The last thing is that love in a time of disaster looks like compassion in action. And if you are someone who maybe holding that space is hard, not knowing what to do or say is hard, the good news is there are actually things that we can do, especially when we're talking about actual disasters. And I'm going to put my little Red Cross hat on for a moment. Making sure that you are actually ready, that we hear stories about incredible disasters hitting whole communities out of nowhere. And it makes us think, hey, maybe I should be ready. Maybe my household really, really needs to be ready. Maybe instead of letting like a go bag be a hypothetical, like, oh yeah, I know what I would get out of my house if it was on fire. It's not an icebreaker question anymore. It's like a real thing that we can take steps here and now. We can do something tangible to deal with disaster maybe before it's even affecting us or our community. And the more ready each of us becomes, the more resilient our households are, the more available we will be to help when disaster hits. So please do whatever you need to do to prepare yourself for heartbreak or for actual disaster. You can get trained to volunteer if you want. Come see me if you want to talk about that. And then the last thing I'll say, because man, I can talk. Sorry about that. In terms of that compassion and action and what it means to embody love in a time of disaster. My very first week on the job at the Red Cross, I got a text from a friend who said, there's a house on fire in your neighborhood. Is it your house? And I was like, I hope not. And immediately, sort of scrambled to figure out where that was happening, and it turned out to be a neighbor. And I sort of stepped out of my office in a daze and looked at our small team at our office here in Bend, and I said, do we do something? What do we do? I'm new. And the team looked at me and they said, help is already on the way. They're already on the way. So friends, may we know in times of heartache or tragedy or disaster that help is already on the way. Help is on the way. Love is on the way. Love is on the way with whatever it has to give. Love is on the way with sacred presence that probably won't feel like enough, but is more than enough. Love is on the way with curiosity. Love is on the way with compassion that is ready to act. Love is on the way, and maybe it's even with fruity pebbles. So may we be people who are on the way with whatever we have, knowing that it is enough, and that even fruity pebbles can be sacred in a time of disaster. Amen.
If you would all rise in body or spirit, we're going to sing There Is More Love Somewhere. I can't believe how this matches. I'm not even kidding. This is like crazy. Okay. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. There is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. More peace. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. There is more joy somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more joy somewhere.
Please remain standing and join me in the unison reading of our covenant while Reverend Schmidt extinguishes the chalice. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
That was a really good fit there, Randy. And that is the truth, my friends. When tragedy or disaster finds us, love is on the way, and healing happens, even when it feels like maybe it will never come. So, sorry, I'm grieving. May we be extravagantly kind to our own broken hearts. May we remember that it all belongs. May we be brave enough to say there are no words. May we show up with the love that we have, knowing that it is enough. May we actually pack a real life go bag. For real. May we go get the fruity pebbles, whatever they might be. Knowing, trusting, hoping, and embodying the reality that in a time of disaster, love is already on the way. Go in peace, my friends.